The night I turned 18, I signed a document at midnight while my parents slept downstairs planning to sell something that was never theirs. I want to tell you how that happened. Because 6 years before that night, my grandfather said something I didn't understand until I was sitting alone in his cabin, reading his handwriting by lamplight, crying in a way I hadn't cried since I was small. But first, the birthday party. My dad threw it, balloons, a sheet cake. 20 people from the neighborhood squeezed into our living room. He gave a toast. Iris is officially an adult, and as a family, we have some exciting plans for the future. He looked right at me when he said it. I smiled and said nothing. I'd been saying nothing for 3 months, waiting, letting them believe the timetable was theirs. It wasn't. My grandfather Harold built the cabin at Cedar Lake himself. Not all of it, the structure was there, but the kitchen table was his. The fence posts along the south edge. The porch where you could watch the light go gold over the water at 6 in the evening. The summer I was 12, he drove me out there in his truck. 40 minutes. White pines so tall they blocked the sun. A porch that sagged on one side. A screen door that never latched. Grab the other end, he said, and handed me a fence rail. We spent the morning replacing rotted posts. He didn't rush me. He taught me to press my thumb into the wood. If it gives, it's done. That evening, wiping sawdust off his hands, he said, "This cabin stays in the family. But family isn't always blood, Iris. Family is whoever shows up." I was 12. I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. I came back every weekend that summer. Learned where the water heater leaked, which window stuck, how to bleed the radiator. My grandmother Vivian taught me to organize the bookshelves by color because, she said, it made the room feel warmer. Grandpa showed me the property line markers, old iron stakes he'd driven in himself. I didn't know then that while I was learning all of this, he was already meeting with a lawyer. Planning for a future he suspected I'd need protection for. Back home in Ridgemont, the air was different. Fine house, fine yard, fine, not warm, fine. One evening, my dad brought up the cabin at dinner. "Property taxes alone are killing us," he said, cutting his steak. "We should sell it, reinvest." My mom nodded, "Makes sense." Grandpa said the cabin stays in the family. My dad laughed, not mean. Worse, dismissive. "You were 12, Iris." He was being nice. Nobody asked me anything else. The conversation moved to my sister Kelsey's debate trophy. I cleared the plates, and on the counter, half hidden under a grocery list, I found a glossy flyer. RIDGLINE Development. Lakefront Lots, Premium PRICES, now acquiring. A handwritten phone number in the margin, not my dad's handwriting. I put it back exactly where I found it, went upstairs, sat on my bed. Someone was already measuring my grandparents' home, in dollar signs. Grandpa Harold died 2 years later. I was 14. At the reception, I noticed my dad Greg and his brother Wade standing by the dessert table. Not eating, talking low. Wade had a folder tucked under his arm. I caught one sentence. "We should move on this, before probate gets complicated." They were talking about the cabin, at the funeral. I was 14. I had no power, no voice, and no idea that my grandfather had already planned for exactly this moment. Grandma Vivian lasted 2 more years. She went in June. The last time I visited, she held my hand, her grip surprisingly firm for how small she'd gotten. "The cabin is yours, Iris. Don't let them take it. Promise me." "I promise, Grandma." She squeezed once and closed her eyes. The night after her funeral, I heard my dad on the phone in the garage, pacing. "Yes, no, I agree. Let's get it moving." His voice was lighter than it had been in weeks. I stood in the hallway holding a glass of water, and I understood something that settled in my chest like a stone. My grandmother's death wasn't a loss to them. It was a clearance. I didn't cry that night. I made a different kind of decision. I just didn't know how to act on it yet. Between 16 and almost 18, the cabin became my quiet rebellion. Every Saturday morning, I drove out to Cedar Lake in the used Honda I'd bought with babysitting money. I patched the porch screen, replaced the weather stripping, swept pine needles off the roof the way Grandpa taught me, because that's how leaks start. At home, the cabin stopped being Grandpa's place and started being the family property. My dad said this at dinner like it had always been true. Uncle Wade started showing up every other Sunday, sometimes with manila folders, sometimes with a laptop open to real estate listings. I tried once. What about Grandma's wish? She wanted me to keep it. My mom set down her fork gently, the way she did before correcting homework. Your grandma was emotional at the end. Sweet. Eddie, this is business. Business, that was the word they used for everything that used to be love. The envelope was behind a stack of old quilts in the hall closet. My name on the front, Grandma Vivian's handwriting. Inside, one business card. Margaret Caldwell, attorney at law, T-Main Family Trust. My hands shook, not from fear, from recognition. Grandma left this for me to find. She knew I'd be the one cleaning out closets. Not Greg, not Wade, me. I slipped the card into my wallet. I didn't call, not yet. 3 months before my 18th birthday, Margaret Caldwell called me first. Iris, there are things you need to know, and there isn't much time. Her office smelled like old paper and coffee. She was silver-haired, deliberate, the kind of person who chooses every word before spending it. She opened a folder and told me the truth. 6 years earlier, my grandparents had established an irrevocable trust. The cabin, a savings account and investment portfolio. Total value, approximately $2.1 million. I was the sole beneficiary. The title to the cabin had been transferred to the trust and recorded at the county recorder's office. It never entered their estate. It couldn't go through probate. Your father and uncle have no claim. She slid a document across the desk. My name on the second line. Why didn't they tell him? Margaret paused. Your grandfather said, and these are his exact words, my sons will sell that cabin before the funeral flowers wilt. I started paying attention after that meeting. The following Sunday, Wade came for dinner. Afterward, he and my dad disappeared into the garage. The door was open a crack, not enough to see, but enough to hear. I already signed the purchase agreement with Ridgeline, $450, but we need the title clean before closing. How do we get it clean? Quitclaim deed. Dad's gone. Mom's gone. We're the legal heirs. We quitclaim the property to ourselves, record it, sell. A pause. What about Iris? Wade's answer came fast, like he'd already thought it through. She's 17, Greg. She can't do anything. And by the time she's 18, the sale goes through. Done deal, we'll give her a cut. 50 grand for college, she should be grateful. I stepped back from the garage door, hands cold. Wade had already signed a purchase agreement for a cabin he didn't own, on land held in a trust he didn't know existed. $450,000. He'd bet $500,000 on an assumption. That night, I texted Margaret 2 words. They're accelerating. Her reply came in 3 minutes. I expected that. Come Saturday, we'll prepare everything. I stayed quiet. I waited. I smiled at breakfast and cleared the dishes and let them believe the timetable was theirs. It nearly broke me. Part of me wanted to walk downstairs and just say, Dad, I know. But Margaret was right. If I tipped them off, they'd find another angle, so I held it, counted down the days, let them keep planning. The night before my birthday, I drove to the cabin alone. Cedar Lake sat flat and dark under a half moon. The pines looked like cutouts against the sky. I parked in the gravel patch Grandpa had leveled himself, walked up the porch steps, the second one still creaked, same as always, sat in the chair next to the one that used to be his. At midnight, I read every document twice. Then I closed the laptop. Grandpa used to sit right here and say, "Patience isn't weakness, Iris, it's timing." I always thought he was talking about fishing. The tears came without warning. Not a collapse, just a quiet overflow I let happen. I cried because I wished this were different. I wished my dad had been the kind of man who'd take me fishing at this lake instead of calculating its resale value. I wished my mom had asked what I wanted instead of telling me what was practical. But wishes don't hold up in court. Trust documents do. At 11:50 p.m., I joined the video call. Margaret appeared in her home office, desk lamp lit, reading glasses on. Ready. Ready. At midnight, I signed. In the garage across town, Wade was printing a quitclaim deed. He called my dad at 11:30. Everything's ready. We file at 9. Make sure Iris is distracted with birthday stuff first. The quitclaim deed included a notary stamp. Margaret later confirmed it didn't match any registered notary in the county. It was forged. My birthday party started at 4. Balloons, a banner, sheet cake from the bakery on Main Street. I smiled, I opened gifts, I thanked everyone. In my jacket pocket, folded into a neat square, was the signed acceptance form from midnight. I didn't touch it, it was already done. When my dad gave his toast, as a family, we have some exciting plans, he looked right at me. Right, Iris. Thanks, Dad, I said, nothing more. He laughed it off, raised his glass, the room followed. In the corner, Uncle Wade was typing something fast on his phone with both thumbs. Then my dad made a mistake. He addressed the room, neighbors, family friends, people who'd known me since I was small, and announced the sale of my grandparents' cabin like it was already settled. His voice warm, rehearsed, final. Iris understands. She knows this is what's best for all of us. Right, sweetheart? Every face turned to me. I set my fork on my plate. The clink was the only sound in the room. I never agreed to sell the cabin, Dad. The silence that followed lasted about 4 seconds. It felt like a full minute. She's kidding, birthday nerves. I'm not kidding. I looked at Wade. You're right, Uncle Wade. This isn't the time, I held his gaze. The time is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. The guests left quickly after that. Polite goodbyes, tight smiles, the kind of exit people make when they can feel a storm building inside someone else's house. Once the door closed behind the last one, my mother turned on me in the kitchen. Do you have any idea what your father is going through? He might lose this house. Our house, the one you sleep in, and you're holding onto a cabin you visit on weekends. Every weekend, Mom. That's not the point. Her voice was controlled, pitched just loud enough to carry. We are a family. Families make decisions together. And if you loved this family. How do you know about a lawyer? She didn't flinch. Wade found the business card in your bag. My stomach dropped, not from fear, from the realization that they'd been going through my things. Before I could answer, Nora Beckett's voice cut through the kitchen doorway. That girl has every right to talk to a lawyer, Denise. Vivian would have wanted that. The silence between them could have cracked glass. Greg sat me down after Nora left. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, Wade and I go to the county office. We file the paperwork. The cabin sells, you get your share. He folded his hands on the table. And we move on as a family. What's my share? 50,000. Out of how much? He didn't answer. If you fight this, he said, you're on your own. No college help. No living under this roof. I looked at my father, the man who taught me to ride a bike when I was 6. You're threatening to kick me out on my 18th birthday. I'm asking you to be part of this family. I pushed back from the table, stood up. I am part of this family, Dad. I'm the part that keeps promises. I walked upstairs, closed my door, sat on the edge of the bed and breathed until my hands stopped shaking. Greg thought his deadline was 9 a.m. He didn't know Margaret's was 8:00 a.m. The county recorder's office opens. Fluorescent lights flicker on. A clerk in a blue cardigan unlocks the front counter. Margaret Caldwell is the first person through the door. She presents 2 documents, a certified copy of the T-Main Family Irrevocable Trust and a lease pendens notice, and asks for them recorded against the Cedar Lake property. The clerk reviews, checks the title, stamps. Recorded. From this moment, anyone who pulls that title will see Notice of Pending Legal Interest, T-Main Family Irrevocable Trust, Iris T-Main, beneficiary. She calls me at 8:14. It's done. I'm at the kitchen table eating cereal. My dad is upstairs getting dressed. My mom is making coffee. Normal sounds, water running, a closet door, the clink of a belt buckle. At 8:30, Greg and Wade come downstairs together. My dad is wearing his business shirt, the one he wore to bank meetings before the store went under. Wade has the folder tucked under his arm, same folder as always. We'll be back by lunch, Greg says, grabbing his keys. I look up from my bowl. Good luck. He pauses, looks at me, something in my voice or my face, then he turns and walks out. 9:05 a.m. Wade slides the quitclaim deed across the counter with a confident nod. The clerk takes it, types the parcel number, reads the screen, types again. Then she stops. I can't record this document, sir. Excuse me. The property title is held under the T-Main Family Irrevocable Trust, recorded in 2020. There's also a lease pendens filed this morning. That's impossible. Our parents own that property. Sir, the deed was transferred to the trust 6 years ago. This quitclaim doesn't match the current ownership record. Greg steps up beside Wade. There's no trust. Our parents never mentioned a trust. I'd recommend you speak with the trustee listed on the filing. The clerk glances between them, a Margaret Caldwell. Wade's hand goes flat on the counter. His face drains. Margaret is seated in the waiting area near the door. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't need to. Greg called me at 9:22 from the parking lot. I could hear traffic behind him. What did you do? I accepted what Grandpa and Grandma left me. That's all. You went behind our backs with some lawyer we've never heard of. Margaret Caldwell has been the trust attorney for 6 years, Dad. You just never asked. A beat of silence, heavy breathing. This is my parents' property. I'm their son. I know I kept my voice even. They chose me not because they didn't love you, but because they didn't trust you with it. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. I counted 3 full arcs of the neighbor's sprinkler before he spoke again. We'll fight this. The trust is irrevocable, even I can't dissolve it. There's nothing to undo. You don't know what you're talking about. I do, Dad. I've had 3 months to learn. He hung up, no goodbye, just a click and dead air. The consequences came fast. Ridgeline Development filed a civil suit against Wade. Breach of contract, misrepresentation of title, $45,000 in penalties, plus $60,000 in additional damages. The county recorder's office referred the forged notary stamp to the district attorney. An investigator was assigned. Wade's real estate license was suspended pending the criminal review. And because court filings are public record and small towns talk, the story made its way through the diner, the church parking lot, and the checkout line at Hanson's Market within 2 weeks. Wade called me once. "Iris, please, ask your lawyer to drop the lease pendens. If the title clears, I might be able to negotiate with Ridgeline. The lease pendens protects my property. It stays." A pause. "Your grandparents would be ashamed of you." I let the sentence sit for a moment. My grandparents are the ones who built this. They chose this. They chose me. My voice was quiet, so I don't think shame is what they'd feel. He hung up. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, Grandpa Harold and me, the summer I was 12, standing beside the fence we just fixed, both of us squinting into the sun. I left it exactly where it was. I found the letter in the desk drawer by the cabin window. My name, his handwriting. One page in blue ink, the letters getting looser toward the bottom the way they always did when he was tired. He wrote that he knew his sons would try to sell the cabin. He didn't blame them. Greg was his boy and he loved him. But Greg had never understood the difference between something that has value and something that's valuable. He said he chose me not because I was perfect, but because I was the one who asked whether the roof needed patching before I ever asked what the place was worth. The last line said, "Take care of it, it took care of you first." Margaret called the following week with one final detail. In the trust documents, my grandparents had designated a separate educational fund. $50,000, earmarked specifically for my college expenses. It had been accruing interest for 6 years. Current balance, just over $58,000. The same number Greg had offered me as my cut of the sale. The same number Wade had dangled like a bribe. My grandparents had already set it aside quietly, years ago, without telling anyone. I enrolled at Ridgemont Community College that week. Environmental science, minor in forestry. Under current address on the housing form, I wrote the cabin's address for the first time. It felt like coming home. Because it was. I asked Greg and Denise to meet me at the coffee shop on Birch Street. Neutral ground. They came together. Greg in a flannel I hadn't seen in years, one of Grandpa's. Denise with her purse clutched tight against her side. We ordered. I waited until the cups were on the table. "I love you," I said, "both of you. I need you to know that. Because what I'm about to say might not sound like it. The cabin is not for sale. Not now. Not ever. I won't be made to feel guilty for keeping a promise Grandma trusted me with because she didn't believe anyone else would keep it." Denise started to speak. "I'm not cutting you out of my life, but if we're going to have a relationship, it has to be built on something real. Not on what I can give you financially, not on guilt, not on the idea that I owe you something just because you're my parents." Greg stared into his coffee for a long time. When he finally looked up, his voice was rough. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't have to fix it today." I stood. "I left enough cash for all 3 coffees. I'll call you Sunday." One small nod. I walked out into the sunlight. Kelsey showed up at the cabin on a Sunday in May carrying a pizza box and wearing the same oversized hoodie she'd had since 8th grade. We sat on the porch with paper plates on our laps. The lake was still. A heron stood in the shallows, motionless, waiting. "I didn't know about any of it," she said after a while. "I know. Was I part of the problem?" I looked at her, 15, still growing into whoever she'd become. She didn't choose any of this. She didn't ask to be the favorite. "You were a kid, Kels, we both were." She nodded, pulled a piece of cheese off her slice, set it on the edge of her plate. "It's really beautiful here." Grandma said the same thing every single time she sat in that chair. Kelsey glanced at the empty chair beside mine, the one with the armrest Grandpa sanded smooth. Can I come back? Any time. She leaned her head against my shoulder for a moment, then sat up and took another bite. We didn't talk about trusts or lawsuits or forged documents. We talked about her school project, about the heron, about whether the dock needed new planks before summer. The cabin didn't just protect property. It made space for something new to begin. It's early June, 6 in the morning. I'm on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the mist lift off Cedar Lake. The pines cut sharp against a pale sky. Somewhere out on the water, a loon calls 2 long notes, then silence. I didn't win against my family. That's not what happened. There's no winning when the people who hurt you are the people who were supposed to protect you. You don't get a trophy for surviving something that should never have happened. But I kept a promise. And for the first time in my life, I'm standing somewhere that belongs to me. Not because I fought for it, because 2 people loved me enough to plan for it. They saw the storm before I did. They built the shelter before I knew I'd need one. My grandfather couldn't make Greg less desperate, or Denise less afraid, or Wade less greedy. But he could make sure I had ground to stand on. He pressed his thumb into the wood all those years ago. And decided I wouldn't give. If you're listening to this and you feel like no one's in your corner, hear me. Sometimes the people who protect you aren't standing in front of you. Sometimes they planned for you years ago, quietly, without telling anyone. And sometimes all you have to do is show up, sign the paper, and keep the promise. What's one thing in your life, a place, a person, a promise you'd protect at any cost? Tell me below. I read every comment. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.